DuckTV Esports is proud to present the next episode of our Call of Duty podcast. And now, with a preview of the upcoming CDL London homestand, I give you episode 2 of the Round 11 podcast with your host, Billy Spots.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the second episode of the Round 11 podcast. I'm your host, Billy Spots, joined once again by Ram Ray and Michael Strite. We were thinking about potentially switching it around, but it turned out that wasn't the case. But I'm glad, because I like the consistency. I like the conversations we were having last week. Before we get into the CDL London preview, I did want to ask a question to the group. Since it is the first official tournament of the Modern Warfare cycle, I thought we'd go through and just name whatever your favorite tournament was from over the years. You know, I think you said you started in Black Ops 3, right?
Yeah, that was definitely, I think that one has a special place in my heart, the one that was my first one I watched, because
that was Season 1 playoffs. Sorry to cut you off.
Season 1 playoffs, yeah. It was Rise Nation Optic Gaming in that 7-game final, Season 1 playoffs. It was a 3-0 that turned into a 3-map comeback, and then I'm pretty sure it was Optic that got up 3-0, and then they ended up winning. Yeah, they ended up winning Game 7, and it was just magical for me to just turn that on and be like, holy smokes, this is so cool. And that one has a special place in my heart. It definitely is my favorite event that I've watched at home, but I also don't mean to brag, but I've been to a few events, and I think my favorite event ever has to be one of them that I've been in person for, because it's just a whole nother experience to be in person for one, and it's got to be watching Optic win. They're world champs, actually. I was there for that.
The one in 2017?
It was a special tournament to be there for, in Orlando even, yeah. And
wow.
I went all the way from out here to Orlando. I finessed my way over there, and it was definitely worth it, and it was just a special tournament. And it wasn't even that, just to be there, like, you know, just to be there for that moment was special in its own way, but, like, that tournament itself was just awesome. It was all around awesome. As much as, obviously, Optic winning is the moment of that tournament, because it was so much behind it and so much context. For me, the Envy comeback was the thing. On Uplink, when Envy came back, I don't remember who they were playing, but they had one of the greatest
United?
comebacks. Maybe. Yeah, I think it was. It was
yeah.
United. One of the greatest comebacks that you'll see on a Call of Duty map, period, and on the biggest stage. And I think that's what I'll remember the most from that tournament, just being in awe, standing there watching that happen live in front of me, like, wait, what? And that's something, as any Call of Duty fan, I can wholeheartedly recommend. Go back and watch that. They did a listen-in while it was happening, and because the comeback was happening, they just stayed in the listen-in for most of it, and it was just magic. So that's my spiel.
It was kind of funny. I don't know if it was the Energy Twitter account or the Chicago Huntsman Twitter account, but they actually tweeted out the Courage's casting from the final seconds of that uplink during that COD Champs, and to this day, it is one of my favorite calls in any esport. Right? Like, everyone will talk about like a lot of really famous moments in esports, like Doa's casting of Faker Zed play the. I can't say it because I don't have the gravitas to do it
Stick
justice.
with COD.
Yeah. Sorry, getting off topic. But to this day, it is one of the dynasty has been cemented as one of my favorite lines. Period. And maybe even in all the sports. Maybe that's stretching a little much, but there's something about it that was just so special.
Yeah.
Hearing that, so
it's a pretty great line. For me, one of my probably my favorite tournament to watch from home was it was World War II Stage 1 playoffs, and this was the tournament where Attach won Esports Play of the Year for the 1v3 against Optic on Search and Destroy. I'm just a big Attach fan, so watching that in real time was insane, and just the storylines behind that event as well. You know, the fall of that Optic roster, as well as FaZe's amazing run during that tournament. They ended up winning. They beat Optic in the 2 best-of-5s. But I forget the name of the map on World War II. But, Attach had a crazy 1v3, killed, I think it was Karma on Bomb, and then it was left with him against Crimsix in a 1v1. They danced around the bomb site, and Attach ultimately killed him. And, as I said, it went on to win Esports Play of the Year, which was pretty cool. But I've been to one COD event, and that was Anaheim of 2019, Black Ops 4. And that was pretty special, the first professional esports event I've went to. And I'm a 100 Thieves fan, so they won their back-to-back titles there, and that was really cool to see. A lot of great matches. Got to see 100 Thieves versus Optic, a lot of great matchups.
Just to Oh, that was about 6 years ago now. I was about to say my favorite tournament was probably MLG X Games during Ghost.
I was thinking of that too.
I think, was that Nate Shot's first title?
No, but it was the first X Games.
Yeah.
Which had COD.
It was like, there was something outside of it being like the first X Games to have esports period, but like there's something else about it. I think it was like Nate Shot's first LAN title in a while or something, but that tournament as a whole, right? Like it was the first time that the infamous complexity roster of Aches, TP, Crim6, and Karma, they'd moved to EG at the time, and they lost, right? They were third, and it's just, it holds a special place in my heart because it was the event that really sold me on COD after that. I was like, I need to watch everything, because after that was Anaheim, and then you had, probably like a Season 1 playoffs thing or something, but MLG X Games 2014, if you are a COD fan and you haven't seen that, I highly recommend going back and watching it. It's really good. It's also really interesting seeing a bunch of older players that either aren't playing now or kind of disappeared for a bit. Like you do have Censor, I think at the time was either on Strictly Business or FaZe. I think this was right before he joined FaZe, but yeah, all three of those tournaments are great. Or four, because you mentioned COD Champs 2017 as well as the 2016 CWL Stage 1 playoffs, I think is the exact
it's
full
tough
name
to
of that.
organize these. It's tough to organize these things into years. You would just want to say like what game it was, and everyone knows what you're talking about. Putting them in years is like I didn't realize how old some of these things are.
Yeah. All right. So now we're gonna get into our CDL London preview, starting with Group A with Dallas, Seattle, Chicago, and the LA Gorillas. I think the first match of the weekend is actually the Paris Legion New York Subliners match, but I just want to do it by groups first because I think it's easier. So I know Ram and I had been talking about this outside of the podcast, but we're both kind of Seattle fans based on location, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, it's Karma and Octane and Enable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's easy to root for them. I think they're the oldest roster also.
They are, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because like, I feel like every other team has like a guy who's like 19.
Has a 19-year-old, 20-year-old to bring the average down. That whole team has like been playing COD for at least 5 years. Literally, Karma, Enable, Octane, Slacked, Apathy.
I think
all
Octane,
of them were playing COD like 4 years ago.
Octane may be the youngest.
Yeah.
And he's still like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he is the youngest. Yeah.
As a whole team of old men, which means this guy's just got a cool dynamic to it.
So on that, on the flip side, you do have Dallas, who is 2 veterans, and then a bunch of 3 younger players, and Hugh, Illy, Shotzi. Thought we'd just go. What are your guys' predictions, both for that match and then as well as Group A as a whole? I guess.
Yeah, I can start. I am really, really rooting for Seattle to upset in this group and come out right behind Chicago. So Dallas and Seattle both finished the weekend 0-2. Obviously, Dallas played the other 2 top teams in the league. Seattle choked 2 Game 5, so there's a lot of interesting tension behind that, and I want to see which team is going to come out and perform well. And my bias says Seattle, but looking at it objectively, I expect Dallas to come out and give a strong showing this tournament and show why they're a top team. But I'm hoping that for that series between them will go 5 games. As far as the overall group, I expect to see Chicago on top. I expect to see Dallas right behind them. But don't be too surprised if you see Seattle get an upset win over Dallas and come out of the group top 2. And then Gorillas, I don't see them coming under the group. Just really, really stacked teams in there.
See, one of the things that's so interesting to me, and we touched on it last week, but Gorillas, I feel, would have a completely different narrative had the situation regarding the hardline perk in the map 2. They very well could be 2-0. It could be a completely different look into this tournament, but I almost feel like Gorillas is like favored to come out second because Seattle has so many concerns when it comes to S&D right now. They lost all 4 S&Ds they played that weekend. They lost 6-0 against... They lost 6-3 against Mutineers in the first one on Gunrunner, and then they lost 6-0 against them on Ramazda, and just looked terrible in both of those games. Like, I was going through them, and I was rewatching them, and I was like, okay, were they just getting outplayed? Were they not? And they just looked clueless. Like, that's the only way I can really think to describe that. But for me, if Seattle can come out with a much better S&D performance, I can easily see them making a dark horse run. In fact, like, they are probably going to be my dark horse pick, along with what you were saying.
Yeah.
I do think they are. I mean, we were saying they're the oldest roster, they're the most experienced roster, so it's very easy to see them, at least potentially, make a run that way.
This is a fun group to pick apart because, first of all, there's been a little bit of a controversy about how random these group selections are and these first round matchups are. But from a storyline perspective, this group is just fantastic. Every team is sort of headlined by one of the greats of Call of Duty. You've got Clayster and Crimsix on their own team. You've got Scump and Formal on their team. You've got Aches leading his unit, and then you've got that Seattle team with all the legends on it. And to think they're all and to think they're all in that one group, it's fantastic that in some combination, literally all of those matchups on paper from a storyline perspective are cool matchups. They're fun to watch, and all of them are going to play out. Looking at who, I'm curious from both of y'all, who do you think on paper, based on what you know about the roster and what you saw 2 weeks ago in Minnesota, which is the worst team in this group? Because it is a toss-up. You saw Dallas go 0-2. You don't know how good they are really. You saw Seattle struggle so mightily. You don't know if they're going to turn it around. And I think from a pure roster perspective, you might want to say LA Guerrillas is the worst team. But at the same time, like we said, they could have gone 2-0. So it really is tough to pick apart which team, because one of these teams is going to go 0-2. We don't know which one it is, but one of these teams is going to have that 0-2 weekend that just ends, because this isn't like previous COD tournaments where you get 4 or 5 series under your belt in the tournament. And sure, it might be still possible to go 0-4, 0-5. We've seen that happen, but you lose twice and your whole trip is done. That's your whole trip to London, was just to lose 2 series, and you're cooked. I'm still on the boat that I think LA Guerrillas is on paper the worst of these 4 teams, but it's not by much, and it's tough when LA is playing Scump and Formal to say that they're going to lose, because we've seen that go a complete opposite direction. I'm curious what both of you think.
So I don't think I can really disagree with that on Guerrillas being on paper the worst, but I also think they're going to be a team that, at least going forward, they're going to appear to be better than the sum of their parts. Because, I mean, you look at that roster: Aches, Aqua, Decimate, Saints, Lacefield. None of those names are super eye-popping. Maybe Saints was a couple years ago, same with Aches, but, I mean, seriously, on paper, that is a really underwhelming roster. It's not one that you're like, okay, they're going to go on a run, they're going to destroy teams, but they looked better at the launch weekend. Who did they beat in their second series? Was it the Mutineers? No, who did they beat?
Yeah, I don't remember who their second series was.
Oh, it was the Mutineers, okay. And I think they won either... No, okay, they won the game 5. Okay. Okay, I thought they'd won better. Never mind. I'm kind of doubting all my predictions now. Damn it. But for me, this is really going to come down to how does Dallas respond from that first weekend. Because, when you have 2 younger players in Illy and Shotzi who are coming from another esport but are, expected to make that transition the same way we've seen guys like Formal, Frosty, I think Hugh played Halo and COD. I think there was a time period where he didn't play COD and he switched to Halo. But if those young guys can bounce back, Crimsix and Clayster put in the performances you're expecting from those two. The Minnesota weekend was a shock. It wasn't I expected that to happen. It was like I was expecting them to come out and look like either a top 3 team minimum. I thought they were going to give better performances against Huntsman. I thought they were going to give better performances against FaZe. And in both series, they just looked flat.
Yep.
So I think potentially the team I'm expecting to go 0-2 could be Guerrillas, just because I think they don't stack up well against Huntsman, and then I'm expecting Dallas to almost lose that first series and then make a run through that, the losers bracket in the group.
I think you bring up a good point about Dallas. Shotzi did not have a good performance at all in Minnesota, and that was his first LAN series as a pro. I think if he can step up being one of the young guns for Dallas, then they can make a run for sure. But I'm ultimately going to decide on riding the wave of the experience of the Surge. I'm going to count on them showing up and proving everyone wrong as to, they're 0-2 on paper, but I think they're going to show up better this weekend. And to answer your original question, I think I agree with you guys. I think Guerrillas, to me, is the worst team on paper, but like you said, it's not by much, and you can definitely see them pull an upset and win this weekend. Not against Chicago though.
Yeah, that's the thing with Gorillas is it's tough to count them out, but we do agree that they're the team that is supposed to go 0-2 in this group, just on roster and what we saw last week. But it's tough. It's tough to just say that they're the worst team. They're definitely not at the bottom of the league quite yet. So they've definitely got a strong case to, upsetting the Huntsmen would be huge. But at least if they lose to the Huntsmen, I think they should put up a good fight against whether Dallas or Seattle, whoever they face in a losers match.
And again, you can never really count on Ake's team. It's Ake's. That dude is driven purely by spite and hatred of all things, all things scum.
A giant killer.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen one. So that leaves us with when we've already kicked this around, but Chicago we're not really touching because we do feel like they're one of the best teams in the game right now, and it would be a surprise if they couldn't find their way out of this. Maybe not 2-0, maybe they go 2-1, but find their way out of this group. So then it just comes down to Dallas and Seattle, two teams that underwhelmed last week, and two teams that you could easily make an argument to say they haven't figured it out yet. They're going to struggle again. But at the same time, you can make an argument to say that both teams they have enough veterans, they have enough talent that the 2 weeks was enough time for them to fix their mistakes. But it's almost like whether, if they're both still struggling, we won't notice because they'll be playing each other. If they're both coming out great and they're firing on all cylinders, we won't notice because they're playing each other, and one of them has to lose in that first round.
On the script right here, I just have our Seattle's S&D woe series because they lost all their S&Ds. It's not like Dallas was putting up a great fight in their S&Ds either. Like their one map win was the 6-1 against Huntsman. So for me, that's really what it comes down to. It's the namesake of the podcast, round 11 from an S&D game, but I think if Seattle can't find a way to win an S&D, I could very well see Empire easily stealing a respawn, winning both S&Ds, and coming out as the second seed of that group, and it would be Chicago and Dallas. That's my prediction for the moment, but I really want to see Seattle make a dark horse run. Because
if they can't play well in S&D, they're cooked.
Exactly.
They really are, but if they, pull that together and they're at least decent at S&D, then everything else is up in the air.
Yeah.
How far they can go.
And here's the deal with how well Dallas is in S&D and how well they dominated Chicago 6-1 on the S&D. Scump said a few times Dallas has been playing S&D tournaments since the beginning, versus how poorly Seattle showed their S&D. I'm really, as a Seattle fan, you have to hope that you can win those respawns and not both series for Seattle in Minnesota, they were up 2-1 and they lost that second hard point both times. So I think if they can, capitalize on that game 4, if it gets to that point, they can take the series. But I think S&D, that game 2 with them, you're going to see Dallas dominate.
All right. So I think let's go through and just get actual predictions of who's coming out from each group, just so we have it that way when we circle back around to the actual bracket play for Sunday, we have it. So
yeah, I'm gonna stick with what chalk is for who should be first and fourth. I think Chicago goes 2-0. I think the Gorillas go 0-2. And if that ends up being the case, then that means the Dallas-Seattle first-round match doesn't even matter because they will rematch in that losers bracket round,
which will be
play
exciting.
Each other again, which will be exciting to see them go against each other again. And right now, I'm gonna lean Seattle. Actually, I think they were good enough in respawn, and it's hard to believe that a team with that many veterans can't take a single S&D. Yeah. I think in that series, they're going to find a way to take one of the two S&Ds, and from that point on, I think they've just given themselves a chance. And it is a tough one, but I think I'll lean Seattle for that matchup, and it'll be Seattle and Chicago coming out of that group.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely think Chicago will finish 2-0. I think Gorillas, agreeing with Michael, will be 0-2, and yeah, when it comes to Seattle and Dallas, it's so hard to pick which one I think will come out on top, but I'm gonna agree with Michael, and I'm gonna say Seattle will edge Dallas out, and they'll make it top 2 out of the group. But I think it'll be really ugly.
See, now I feel like I have to be a dissenting opinion and say that Empire is gonna take that second seed, but I'm gonna go with my heart, and I'm gonna stick with Seattle as well, because the only two teams I'm really a fan of are Seattle and Chicago. So, moving on to Group B. Group B is not as interesting on a surface level, but once you start like, for me, it's the one that has a lot of really like. I want to see so much more out of a lot of the teams because a lot of them, right, in such a small sample size from the launch weekend, that you can't really get a good read on them. But they don't have a lot of the household names that Group A does. But starting with the Paris Legion New York Subliners match, that one's gonna be really weird because I thought Paris Legion was one of the teams that definitely kind of overperformed week one. And then Subliners, I was shocked at how poor they played. So I guess who do you guys expect to win that series? Who are you looking for to make a huge impact in that series? Because both have at least like super interesting names. At least like Kismet and Dens and Shocks versus like Zuma and Attach.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of talk that if Paris overperformed, are they going to play that consistently throughout the season? And obviously, we've only seen one weekend. I do expect a better performance out of New York, better performances out of Temp and Zuma. I think if they sub in Censor for that Search and Destroy, I'm just kidding. I think I'm going to predict Paris in 4, but I want New York to perform better. And I think if New York does lose this series, and Paris wins convincingly, then I might start to throw up a red flag for New York and that roster and how well they're playing together. I do want them to perform better, but I think Paris is still better than a lot of people expect, and I do expect them to win this series.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about New York. Obviously the names on that team have all had their moments. They've all been excellent players at time. Literally all of them have had moments where they're, for a week or so, really absolutely at the top of the Call of Duty game. So you know that they're all capable of such big things together. You believe in that organization. I'm just not there yet with believing that this is the right roster for them. I need to see them win, and I need to see them get out of this group and impress me for me not to say that right now New York is one of those bottom teams in the league and to just assume that, I'm just in a place where I think I'm going to assume that they're going to lose until they prove me wrong, and especially against a team like Paris that I don't know how much of an advantage it is for a Paris team to be playing in London, but
a Paris team with Australians on it.
Especially that. But I do like Paris's chances of continuing that. I think I'm more in the camp that what we saw wasn't so much of a fluke, and maybe they're not a great team, but I think they've certainly proven themselves to be at least the middle of the pack among the teams right now, and I think that team has that chip on their shoulder that now that there's a chance to actually win an event, they're going to want to get out of this group, and I think they have a really good chance to do that. So I'm definitely in that matchup leaning more Paris. I'm in that Paris camp more than I think your average spectator would be, and I think I'm against the New York Subliners doing well more than you would think based on that roster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys right there. I think Paris is favored. I think if New York had shown any positives in the first week, I'd probably be more forgiving to them. But I have so many doubts. They do have Censor and Happy as subs, so potentially see those come in. I really don't think Censor would ever actually see utilization, but I think Happy is actually an option. I don't remember who he was on before.
I've never heard of him before.
Happy was a Black Ops 3, made some appearances, but since then he's been out of it for a long time. So it was interesting to see him come back.
Yeah, he was actually on both Cloud9 and TK back in the day.
Yeah, in Black Ops 3 he was a league player. I mean, he wasn't that good, but he was a league good enough to be in the league kind of player. And then after that, it was off the map for the next few years. So it's fun to see him be back on a roster, but I don't know if he'll actually get in the game.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no reason to have any faith in New York at the moment. I can't say it any better than how you said it earlier. But the next one is London versus Toronto. For me, the most interesting thing is, will London have a home field advantage of that sorts? I know the London crowd gets super into it. A lot of them, my guess, predominantly they're going to be behind, obviously, the London Ravens, potentially the Huntsmen as well, because the Scum Hector fan base is huge and it just goes everywhere. But the London-Toronto series is also really interesting. We talked about it a lot last week, or at least mentioned it a lot, was the subutilization that Toronto could go through. I was reading, I think it was either on the COD Comp subreddit or something else, but Metals was apparently scrimming with the B team, which I think was really interesting because Metals to me was one of their better players. So unless there is like a communication error, I don't see why they would do that. So they're almost doing the subutilization the wrong way, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, I think for me, I think we are going to see a London 3-0. I just think that if any team is going to have a home field advantage, London is a great example of that. CDL London last year, the crowd was awesome, and I had so much fun watching it just because in the background during intermissions, you would hear the crowd start chanting.
Yeah.
And so, as a fan of the league as well, I want that home field advantage to have an effect, and it would be really cool to see London get a 3-0 and see how hyped the crowd would get. So that is my honest prediction, and if they are selling out medals for Kleenex or whoever it was.
Was it Bance is the name I was
okay.
around, or is Bance even on?
Yeah,
he is on Toronto, yeah.
So that would be an interesting substitution in the sense that maybe Metals is not the guy you take out, but if anyone's coming off the bench to come in, I think at home, in London, Bance is a really fun category, and it's something that if it works out, if the team at least doesn't go 0-2 or make some noise, Bance is going to get that love from the home crowd, and it's almost something where you're buying a portion of the fans. Where obviously,
I love that, yeah.
If you're playing London, good luck. You're not going to get it. But if you're playing anyone else, just having Bance sitting there, it's like all the London fans sitting there are like, oh, well, we'll cheer for Toronto in this match.
Yeah.
So I like that play, and we'll see. It's just one of those things where you can definitely say, I don't like what they're doing. I don't think it's going to work out for them, but it's a risk that they're taking that if it pays off, it pays off.
Yeah.
Looking at this matchup, London we've seen that they're capable of really, really doing well in storming and getting those 3-0s. And it's hard not to believe that home crowd, first match, with that fire now that they can really run the table and win this. And this is their only chance to be in London. I mean, this is the London homestand for them.
They actually have
you have another one?
Yeah, there's a London tournament in June, not July.
Okay, so they do come back, but
yeah,
you don't get too many opportunities in front of this crowd, and it's just it's important for them, and I think they're going to have that competitive fire, and they're just going to be on another level. And I think what we've seen is that when this team is at that level, they are really, really, really good, and I think that's just going to be too much for Toronto to handle, and it'll be interesting to see. I think from a perspective of watching just a team that really had its ups and downs last week, London's absolutely a really interesting team to watch just to see what they're going to do. Like, this has some of the biggest question marks around them.
Especially since they were here. Oh, sorry for cutting off. Especially because they were so feast and famine, especially.
Yeah, and the point I'm trying to get to is that they're an interesting team to watch to begin with, and because it's in London, every London match is appointment viewing, I think.
Oh, yeah.
If you're going to watch anything going on, do treat yourself to watching those London matches. Those are absolutely worth it. That London-Toronto match, let me see exactly where it is. Let me just make sure I get you set up. That's going to be Saturday, 8 a.m.
Yeah.
So 8 a.m. Pacific time.
Love it.
That they've really made that as far back as it can be. So it's kind of the prime time. It'll be it's not the last match of Saturday, but they've put it in a prime time slot. So that's just going to be a blast to watch, and I'm excited to see how far they go, because the deeper they go, the louder that crowd's going to be behind them. And from a storyline perspective, whether it's in the finals or whether it's in the first round of that playoff bracket after the group stages, the best matchup you can see is honestly London versus Chicago. That would be.
I think that's definitely the matchup that will at least get the fan.
That would be the title
yelling,
fight.
Yeah.
That's on paper. That's what you can draw up as your finals that'll have the most viewers. Honestly, so that's something that could happen if Chicago pulls through, and if London performs the way they should. That's absolutely something that we might see.
All right, let's just go around and get Group B predictions. Personally, I think it's going to be London, and then I think London with the home crowd behind them are going to be able to take revenge against Paris, because Paris 3-0'd them, right? They're 3-0'd New York, and then they got 3-0'd by Paris.
I think they did, or they 3-1 at least, yeah.
I think London specifically went 3-0.
Yeah, 3-0. Yeah,
that's
okay.
What's weird about them. They just were polar opposites.
Okay, so their the maps were not that far apart, so I think it's very likely that we could potentially see I don't know. London's such a coin flip, as we were mentioning. So my personal prediction is that I think London will come out first, with Paris being the one to come out second. Because I think Paris, at least in comparison to New York and Toronto, just looked better. Maybe that was an overperformance like we were mentioning, but they're the team at the moment that I have the most faith in to perform well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think for me, I'm going to go the opposite of you. I'm going to say Paris will come out on top and London will be right behind them. And the reason why is I think Paris is still riding that wave of doubt from everyone who had them in the power rankings, everyone who still thinks that it was a fluke weekend. I think they're riding on a lot of confidence. I really believe in Kismet and company. You know, if they do end up facing off against London in that second round of the group stage, I think it'll be really close, and it's going to be really fun to see the crowd help London make it a great series. But at the end of the day, I think Paris will take it in 4 or 5. I'd love to see it go to Game 5. But, yeah, I'll have Paris 1 and London 2.
Yeah, I'm feeling the Paris train as well. I think they do storm this group and take it 2-0. And maybe they go to Game 5 against London, but I'm on the same boat that I think Paris and London are the two teams that stand out in this group. I think Paris does get out in that 2-0 spot, and I think although London falls, they figure it out in that other spot. With regards to who's going to finish fourth between New York and Toronto, to me it's kind of a coin flip.
Yeah.
Leaning Toronto, I guess, but it's more or less a coin flip, and I don't like the chances of either of them, taking out whoever loses that Paris-London matchup, and so we gotta have some diverse opinions here because we've picked the same people to come out of both groups, and we'll see if we look like idiots next week or if it just comes out the way it was that we were able to get most of these right.
okay, I'll change my. I don't want London. No. I had London coming out first. I will say that Toronto somehow, some way is gonna pull some weird miracle upset. They're gonna Bance is gonna have some home crowd. Bance is going to go off on the main stage with the London crowd behind him. It's all over.
See some Bance copy pasta in the chat, maybe. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I can't even, realistically change it. I have so many questions related to Toronto and New York that I'm it has to be London and Paris for me. That's just who I think is going to come out. So in those matchups, I think it would be Chicago versus... Ooh.
Chicago versus whoever you said would come second.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to remember, Chicago, Paris, I think was my... No. I had London coming out first. Yeah, it'd be Chicago, Paris.
Yeah.
And then it would be London, Seattle. Yeah. Ooh, London, Seattle would be a lot of fun. Because I think Wuskin looked so good week 1. He looked not head and shoulders above everybody else, because I still think Simp is a monster, and I'm just kind of sad we don't get to see him this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
But... Wuskin was kind of a one-man army, I could very easily see him, especially, is Wuskin British or is he, because I know there's a lot of Scottish players. No, okay, he is from the UK.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's Scraps, not Wuskin's.
Wuskin's is too,
Yeah, no.
Twins, it's not
I pulled up the wrong one. But I think it's definitely, I don't know. I part of me feels weird trying to make a bracket prediction without the bracket actually in front of me. But my gut feeling is that Chicago's going to win it. London is either going to come second or they're oh wow, such a controversial opinion. They'll come second or third and fourth. But
there's no third and fourth either. They're just, if you lose, you lose in that bracket. So it's going to be a first, a second, and then that's it. Third and fourth are going to be the same thing.
I think we discussed it a little bit earlier, but I actually think the possibility of a Chicago-London final isn't that far off, especially, if it goes to our predictions, Paris topples London, and London finishes second in their group, facing off against assuming Chicago finishes first. I meant Chicago-London semifinal.
Yeah.
I'm expecting a Chicago-Paris final.
I would feel a bit robbed if it was Chicago-London and semis, not finals. I feel like if it was finals, you would just it would be a one-of-a-kind experience. Yeah,
it truly would be. A lot of it's going to come down to that London-Paris matchup, assuming they both win their first round. But overall, I think this is Chicago's to take.
I agree. I mean, it's just Chicago's game right now, and I think 2 weeks isn't enough time for somebody else to really catch up to them. Atlanta's not here, so we don't get to watch that, and I think what we came away with 2 weeks ago is that it's Atlanta and Chicago's game right now, and that's going to change, obviously, but I don't think it's going to change yet, and I think this is a tournament where Chicago just goes 4-0. Yeah, 4-0.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in addition to that, obviously that London matchup in the finals is the prime time billing if you're trying to schedule things. But I think that if Chicago does go 2-0 and London gets second in their group, they got to play each other in semis. I think more that's what's going to happen. And as far as who I think comes second place, I think that's going to be more of whoever gets out of Seattle and Dallas. I think right now Seattle, because that's who I'm picking, so it's hard for me to imagine Seattle coming second place. That would be a really big performance by them. But I just feel like
be a great bounce back.
Whoever does come out of that group, whether it is Seattle or Dallas, is going to take down their semifinal matchup and then have that rematch against Chicago in the finals.
Well, it is. There's also the kind of mental aspect of group play versus bracket play, and then like league play versus tournament play. And we've always seen like players turn up for tournaments, right? Like you have your, I mean, Clayster's always the guy who sticks out in my mind because for me, he was always that really momentum-based player. Like you look back at the phase runs in Advanced Warfare, and I know you guys didn't really follow it, but there was this period of time where phase was either winning the event or going out like top 16, right? But I really feel like, I'm so sorry, I did the one thing I was going to try not to do this week, and I was losing my train of thought, so I'm going to cut myself off and let you guys, if you guys have a point you guys want to talk about, I'll cut myself off right now.
Yeah, so for me, it's Chicago 1, which is not a bold choice, but number 2 is Seattle for me, and I'm willing to stand by that. I'm willing to say that I think Seattle Surge is going to be the second place team coming out of this homestand. And for you guys, is it for both of you, London that you're still leaning on being second? Is it Paris maybe that comes in second?
I still feel like Paris is going to win. I think I had London winning that group, but I think when I was initially going through, when I was initially writing my predictions, and I kind of changed based on some other things I had seen or read, but I think London is going to come second, and mainly this is because I love the narrative of a London-Chicago final more than anything else, but that requires them to come out first in their group. That requires them.
Chicago can always just slip. I mean, they can lose one of their series and be 2-1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say they're super volatile because we'd have 2 matches to go off of, but
the thing
that
with
player
Chicago
group,
is that it would be a shock if they didn't make it out of group, but it wouldn't be a shock if they went 2-1. If they lost to someone, then they figured it out. You'd say, well, okay, they had a bad series and they're still in the bracket and whatever. So we've seen that happen before, where the team that's supposed to win does drop one series, but they wake up essentially and pick up the next one. So it wouldn't be crazy to have, maybe London gets second in their group, but so does Chicago. And then you could end up with both of them being second place in their group, both of them seeing each other in the finals. A lot of different possibilities here. So it really comes down to, not necessarily projecting how you think the brackets are going to go, but who you really, really think is the second best team after Chicago from this group of teams.
I have something interesting. I think that, although, in my prediction earlier I said I have Seattle edging out Dallas. However, if Dallas were to edge out that matchup and Dallas finishes second in their group behind Chicago, I think Dallas would have a stronger chance against that team from Group B than Seattle, and that's purely based off the search and destroy. But I think if Dallas does put themselves in their position, I think we could surprisingly see like a Chicago-Dallas final, which would shock a lot of people. But I think if they can put themselves in that position, take that match over Seattle, and get over the hump, then it's possible. But I think my more objective prediction is going to be Chicago, and then I think Paris will finish second. I think they're going to continue showing their dominance and proving people wrong.
So the only reason I'm asking this is because the 7th, 8th position of the team that doesn't get any points from this tournament is effectively a waste. Who do you guys think is going to come 7th and 8th? I'm leaning towards Subliners and Gorillas at the moment, because that was kind of the feeling I was getting from you guys as well. But
I agree with you.
I don't know. I'm kind of worried for Subliners if what we think is going to happen comes true, because you don't win anything you don't win any points. You don't get any points from week 1. You don't get any points from the second tournament. I think they're not at Atlanta either.
Yeah, that would be. It's interesting. I was checking the same thing. If they're not at Atlanta, then
they're not back until the Los Angeles homestand.
Yeah. Okay. So let's imagine this. Let's imagine Subliners does go 0-2, another embarrassing performance. Do you think having that extra time and having 3 or 4 weeks before you play again is that an excuse to make a roster change, or is that your reason to say that this roster can work it out because you now have the time to work it out? So is that something where you say, well, now that I have the time to throw in somebody new and have the new team of 5, however many changes you might make, practice with each other? Or do you say, look, guys, that's not how we started, but whoever is in charge of the team can say, we're sticking with our guns, we're going to go with this team of 5, and you guys have 4 weeks now to work it out and come back and really surprise everyone. I don't know how I feel about that. But, give me some thoughts.
Yeah, if that were to happen, as fun as it would be to see them put Sensor in, I feel like what would happen is they would take those 4 weeks, work it out with that roster of 5, and say, we're on strike. We just had strike 2 in London, horrible performance. Let's see if this extended period of time can give us time to work it out, build our chemistry, play better as a team. And if they play poorly again in LA, then I would see that to them like as a strike 3. Let's see if Sensor can become a viable option. I'm doubting he'll be put in because, if you guys have seen on Twitter, his poor performances in 10s with the players. But I would love to see it, and for the storyline, it would be amazing.
I'm leaning towards, I think the thing is who would they remove from that roster? Who kind of sticks out in your mind as the weak link out of Zuma, 10th, accuracy, 0, attack?
I feel like I'd have a solid answer after I see them play this weekend. See more sample size.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Bigger sample size. I'm on the same boat with that. I'm curious as well, now that we talked about how they have 4 weeks, because I just checked, the LA one is the same week of March that it is now, so it's exactly a month away. Who are the teams that do have that break, that are playing right now in London, but then after this London event, they'll have a 4-week break? I'm trying to do some tough math here and figure out who that is.
I think they might be the only ones who actually have that break, because I know...
I think Gorillas also, actually. I don't see them in LA. So that could be tough for them as well. Yeah, no Gorillas in Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta,
yeah.
So let's see, we're missing... The 4 teams that won't be in Atlanta are... Dallas, Seattle, Gorillas, and
Subliners.
So those are the 4 teams that are happening here right now. So playing in this event. So that's really interesting. All 4 of these teams, they get a month off after they're done playing this, and like we said, that really gives you a lot of time to work out whatever you think's wrong as a team, but it also gives you an opening to experiment with subs. If you like your subs, if you have them on your roster and you say, I want to at least give it a chance, then maybe instead of, because we talked about how it's not something that's normal in COD right now to switch players out mid-tournament, which they're allowed to do, but they're not going to. They like to stick with the same team the whole way through. But looking at it now, maybe in that 4-week period is when you mess around with subs and you just say, let these 5 players scrim together. On the next day, let these 5 players scrim together, and really have this trial period where you try to figure out what's my next roster. Or are you going to say, you're going to put your foot down and say, nope, this team of 5 is what we're going with. You guys need to figure it out, and you're going to figure it out because of how much time you have. I mean, that's a question that's... We talked about it with Subliners, but if Gorillas goes 0-2, that might be the question with them.
Yeah, so it's those two. Yeah, those 2 teams. It's going to be really interesting, really big chance for them this weekend to show they can win.
The other concern, though, is that not every team has viable subs. Like we were touching on it last week, right? And we keep joking about Sensor, but for teams that do struggle, I could see them making a roster change at least in that break, assuming they have a break, right? I was looking at the Gorillas roster. Technically, they have Blast and Ricky as subs, but they're their coaches, right? Outside of that, Gorillas doesn't have any subs.
Interesting.
And so, do they start looking to the AMC and the open tournaments, or do they look to be like, hey, can we buy one of your bench players?
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of bummed that more teams either didn't take the sub situation seriously or didn't have a bigger roster. Even if your B team is just a bunch of 17 to 18-year-olds, a lot of younger players. Yeah. Just so you have that potential pipeline. You're
allowed to have your B team play through the open bracket, so I don't understand why these teams didn't invest in having an entire B team to play with and to just see how they perform in an open bracket situation. If your B team wins the open tournament, maybe you bench your entire team of 5 and you say, let's see what the B team does, because they just won the open tournament. And looking at the AM scene, I don't know enough about the specifics of what happened in Minnesota and who the best AM players and teams are right now. But I think there's definitely a team of 5 players. So there's a team of 5 players that at least played in that open bracket in Minnesota that if you threw them together, they'd be a mid-level league team, I think.
You know, I could very easily see making their way onto a roster, and I'm still surprised he didn't make it onto one, is Parasite.
Yeah.
Parasite's been around forever. I mean, admittedly, he had a really bad reputation for a long time because he was a very toxic player, very confrontational player, but I think he's definitely kind of matured.
Yeah, and I think he's a valuable asset to have as not even a starter, but just a player that's on your roster that's consulting with your other players and is there to assist during tournaments. It's just... Yeah, these teams, maybe, I might reserve myself to say that maybe they didn't sign their whole roster yet because they want to watch 2 tournaments of open bracket play to say, now we figure out who I want. And maybe it's after this tournament that we're actually going to see some strings being pulled and some more players getting added and teams are starting to fill up their rosters. But if they don't, then again, it's a big, big missed opportunity. You can easily just have more options. And it's like I said, I firmly believe that there's 5 AM players that you can string together that would put up a fighting chance in one of these league tournaments. Maybe not. I mean, to say that they're in the middle of the league is a bit bold because they're so inexperienced, but there's just talent out there, man.
There's a lot of talent.
I mean, Simp was, I think, like, prior to joining E United last season, he was just like an amateur player playing Black Ops 3 tournaments, and everyone was like, "Oh, this guy's really good." We don't know how good he'll be elsewhere, and then we saw him in Abizi. That was his name. Him and Abizi become the tiny terrors.
You saw it happen with Dashy.
You saw it happen with Arcides and Pristini.
You saw it happen with Arcides and Pristini. You may or may not see it happen with Illy. I mean, he's in that process right now of like that name that everyone said this guy's going to be really good, and now he's playing on a league team, and we're about to find out how good he really is.
Attached to won champs at 18. Going off what you said, I totally agree. There's a lot of talent out there. Seattle's B team actually did really well in the open bracket. I think they placed like top 8. I don't want to say exactly because I don't remember, but I remember they did really well. And another reason these teams should be taking subs seriously is because emergencies can and do happen. Not very often, but the example that I think of is Priest Dallas was sick on Championship Sunday. Luckily, they had Pharaoh as a sub, who I thought was a really great sub. A lot of controversy around that, but he helped them place top 4 on that Championship Sunday. So, I don't know. You just never know what can happen. And, yeah, Michael's pulling it up. Hybrid gaming.
Yeah, and you even had a Zuma. We were talking about last week, like Zuma filling in for Dashy when they couldn't get his visa.
Yeah, right? For like the first 2 weeks of the Pro League, Dashy was waiting on his visa.
It really just feels like an oversight. Like, obviously, like, a lot of people are like, oh, we don't want to, we're comfortable with our roster, but it's like, just have a group of 5 that you could potentially sell off for profit down the line. Like, you gain nothing and you lose nothing, or you lose nothing by having it.
So, Hybrid Gaming had 2 players that were the 2 subs on Seattle, Pander and Proto. They teamed up with 3 AMs that aren't affiliated with the Seattle Surge. They got 4th place. That was Spoof, Vivid, Super, Pander, and Proto. They got 4th place. While I'm here, I might as well shout out that we did have a European team win the Challengers bracket. Team Singularity, Detain, Insight, Bids, Maple, Chain. All these guys are Europeans. Awesome to see. There's another European team that got 3rd place. It really was a big showing for Europeans in that challenger scene saying, don't forget about us.
Yeah. Great practice for the Seattle subs.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome for them.
The English team actually won that event. I think all of at least 2 of the 3 highest placing teams from the Challengers launch weekend were from the UK. So that's really cool. I mean, COD, for as long as I've been watching, has always been so America-centric, right? And like when I would branch out and watch other things, like watch CS and it's dominated by the Swedes for a bit or dominated by European players, like COD was always a very American thing. And it makes me really happy seeing it like branch out. Like you always had like teams like Mind Freak and who was the other? I think it was TCM. They were around.
Tainted Minds was there.
Tainted Minds was around for a bit, but I think TCM was UK.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see, and we mentioned it last week. I like when like random players pop out of like traditionally like either Counter-Strike countries or League of Legends countries, right? Like Kleenex is from Denmark, and I think
Yeah.
that's so cool. And I want to see him do well because it'd be amazing to see COD become so much of a more global brand, or
Yeah.
global
I think
esports.
That's what was special about Team Singularity as well. Oh no, never mind. They're all from the UK. I thought there was something else going on.
They were Singularity. I think at COD Champs last year was fully Danish.
Yeah, or
That's cool.
it was at least from weird. It wasn't just a UK team. It was from pulling players from weird places in Europe, which is awesome to see. And yeah, I also will shout out Renegades. They're an all Australian team. They got top 6, so half of the top 6 teams were international in challengers. And like we said, maybe it's tough to argue that you can cherry pick the best players on these teams and try to work them into your roster, but that's worked in the past. When you look at a really, really good AM team and you can find 1 or 2 players that are killing it on that team, like those Kleenexes, they usually work out. It's rare that you find a player that is on a great AM team and also clearly just destroying as a player on that AM team. It doesn't feel like it really. I don't have any memories of that player getting called up to the big leagues and it not working out. It just feels like that talent does transform.
I feel like it's always been that way, because I remember when Dashy was like the hot new thing, kind of like towards the middle, or not the middle, the middle of World War II. I remember kind of going, "Who's this guy? Blah blah blah's trying to get. His name's Dashy. Like, that's stupid." And then the next season, he's destroying everyone during the Black Ops 4 season, right? Simp comes out of nowhere and is the best player in the game, or starting to look like the best player in the game for 2 years in a row. We'll see how he does out of Atlanta, but I don't know. It's disappointing. I wish that they were more open to taking in AM teams, especially when you have nearly 170 teams come out to the open bracket for the launch weekend. Does the London event have a open bracket?
I'm pretty sure it does. Maybe
it probably does. I would be surprised if it doesn't, but
yeah.
Oh no. Okay, there is a Call of Duty Challengers London League. Okay.
Yeah. I wonder if they have the top seeds for that already yet.
Yeah, so again, it's like Singularity, War, Train Hard.
Yeah, so look
Ravens
at that.
Academy.
So I guess that makes sense, but this is all European, this Challengers event. And I guess
that makes sense,
it makes sense that an AM team isn't going to spend the money to travel to London unless you're supported by a bigger org, which almost none of them are, but that's going to be really cool to watch, just this all-European open bracket go at it. And it's not like the talent is lacking. I mean, we're looking at Singularity and War at the top, and these teams they won the last event, so they're up there, and we're going to see whether they can continue to be great. And we're going to see again. I'm actually going to try to pay a little bit more attention to which players jump out, jump off the board as just players that really use this Challengers event as a chance to say, you need to put me in the league, and you just call out all those teams and say, somebody give me a spot.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a great weekend of COD. I'm looking forward to it.
So excited to trash my sleep schedule.
Yeah, for real.
No. I've actually decided I'm staying up because I have tried waking up for events before and it's gone terribly. But thank you guys again for listening. This was our CDL London preview. When we come back, we'll be recapping London. This will probably be around this time next week. And then we have a week break before the 2 week break. 2 week break before the Atlanta Phase homestand.
Yep.
And we'll be covering that too in a couple weeks. So thank you guys again for listening. Have a good one. I'm Billy Spots, and I need to come out with a better sign off because I think it'd be kind of funny to have a good consistent sign off. But thank you again.
We'll think of it. All right, thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for listening.